It's shocking. Islam has been basically entirely banned in the entire region, which I'm not going to even try to pronounce. Xinjiang was the region. And sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Yeah.
Ready to go?
No, because I'm in the middle of recording. I'm actually in the middle of a sentence. Yeah.
Hello, viewers. It's me.
Sorry.
Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Problem with Reading podcast. I'm Brevin.
I'm Steven.
And I'm Sam.
And this is Season 2! Woo! Hey. Insert Special Victims Unit sound effect here.
Yes.
It's bigger, it's badder, and it's less maniacally focused on one single book. And that's probably not going to be the best for our intellectual growth, but maybe more fun, a little bit quicker. Mm-hmm. You know, my family listens to this sometimes. And every single time, the feedback is, wow, that was a good podcast, except for the part where you talked about MacIntyre. Just do the article.
Which is like all of it, unfortunately.
Yes. So we are moving in that direction. We've got some media of the social variety in the works. Facebook, maybe Twitter. We'll have Sam run the Twitter. That'll be good for his brain.
I feel so used by the corporate machine.
I didn't even know about this. So
Sam already agreed to be our social media meister. And if we have links,
definitely cannot.
We'll put them in the description when we have them. Also planning a lot of special topics like Marvel, college, the Eastern Orthodox versus the true Mother Church divide,
No bias there at all.
Sam, what are you looking forward to in Season 2?
What am I looking forward to in Season 2 is being here dutifully every single week.
Absolutely.
For the rest of the season.
I can't think
of across the pond.
We appreciate your sacrifice. You're willing to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every single week.
That's the plan, and my roommate will appreciate it too.
What we need to do is get Sam to record like dispatches from England, and then we can just like insert him at the end or at the beginning.
That would be brilliant. Like have like a wartime correspondence sort of thing, like with sound effects in the background.
Oh, that would be incredible.
Yeah. You're reporting from the desiccated ruins of the Anglican Church.
I mean, I'll let you know how Descartes' doing over there. Considering that's what I'm going to be studying. A lot of Descartes.
Boy.
Why?
Because I'm taking Descartes.
Why not?
Everything between. It's basically the U Scholars Modernity class.
Yeah.
It's like that, but actually learning philosophy.
So what No, but we just read MacIntyre. What you're actually learning is just this bastardized, broken language of individualism with necessarily the conclusion of nihilism. Like that's what you're.
I think that Kant brings something a little bit better than that.
Does he?
Does he though?
I think so.
Yeah, he probably does. Yeah, that's fair.
So I was at the Chesterton conference, and the overall winning Clarihue, which is a short, badly written poem about a biographical figure, was the following. Kant, a savant, ain't a saint.
Ooh.
Whoa.
Yep.
I feel like that one deserves some snaps, You got to snap it out.
Okay. So we're on Season 2. We're doing articles. We got all that coming up. But I just have one question for you guys. So we haven't talked in like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's been a while.
I've been questioning your guys' existence at this point. So, I don't see you, and I'm not hearing from you. I don't know if you exist or not. Sam's going to find all about that with his Descartes class.
Well, you can't see me right now.
That is.
I could just be an AI.
Oh, Sam.
Yeah.
Are you sure of that? I could have some binoculars just staring at you right now.
What?
Sorry, man.
Okay. Well, my question was that since I haven't had you guys to talk to, I've just been building up all this premium content. And I have like at least 3 little stories to tell. Maybe we'll split them out. Maybe I'll just interrupt you at random points to stick it into this podcast. But
well, we could just record them here and then stick them into future podcasts, so then we have good stories forever instead of fizzling out in 3 weeks.
that's true. But see, my life is just so exciting that I know I will always. My life is a content generator. Like, yeah, I was born for this. But on that note, being born for this, a man was born to enjoy good brews. Steven, what are you drinking right now?
Yes, I knew that question was coming, but that was a very roundabout way. Right now, unfortunately, I am not drinking a brew. I am drinking some tea and honey because I have a cold and have a sore throat. So that's what's keeping me going this podcast.
Hey, Steven.
Hey, Brevin.
Have you ever heard of the turn of phrase, brew a pot of tea, brew a cup of tea?
Oh, that is a good point. I guess now, whenever I hear brew, I just think, oh, beer.
Very disappointed. Sam,
as you should be.
What are you drinking?
I am drinking a Two-Town Cider House Pacific Pineapple Cider.
Ooh, those are good.
They are delightful. It's
like that
they're cheap, they're local, they're decently tasty. So that's what we're drinking right now, and it has no alcohol in it. I mean, it's got 5%, so basically no alcohol.
Pretty much.
That's like medium. That's medium strong. I just saw a hilarious thing here. See, this is me, my life, generating content. A little fly flew into my desk fan, got blown through it, looked very painful, and then immediately got sucked back through it again.
Oh.
And now I don't see it anymore.
Oh, that poor fly.
It was pretty great. But as for what am I drinking right now, I am drinking some smooth Evan Williams bourbon. I found a 1.75 liter handle at the store. And I know that's redundant, but I just learned what the difference between a fifth and a handle is. So that's very exciting for me. And it was way cheaper than it usually is. So I am pretty happy for more than one reason.
Actually, what is the difference? Because I have not known this.
Glad you asked. So a handle is 1.5 liters. Wait, 1.75 liters. Okay. And a fifth is 750 milliliters, or 0.75.
Oh,
and for some reason, there's not a common name for just a 1 liter, or if there is, I didn't find it in my one Google search. My guess is because
I think you call it a liter.
Well, but there has to be like a snappy name. Like, okay, like you've heard the fun phrase. Oh wait, dang it! Whenever there are 4 Anglicans together, there's always a fifth.
Yeah,
it really should be said about like the Orthodox or like an actual fun congregation that's not dying out and is full of geriatric apostates. But you know,
strong words.
Wow.
Yes.
He's
Okay.
still bitter about the Anglicans leaving his church.
Yeah.
So a snappy name for a 1 liter. So you mean like they have a snappy name for the 2 liter, namely the 2 liter?
Well, no. Like just a fifth or a handle are just the two things that are the two most sold alcohol sizes, I guess. And it might just be the divide between like casual cool drinkers and like straight up alcoholics is my guess.
That's a good point.
But I have no idea.
Or the fact that if you just like buying in bulk, I mean, if it is cheaper, like
Yeah.
Whatever. For the record, I do not have that. I'm not an alcoholic.
Steven's like, so what do you call a 5 liter jug of? And where can I get one? Okay.
We talked about these. I was hanging out with my grandparents the other night. We were talking about different wine bottles. Have you seen the Solomon bottle?
What's a Solomon?
What is this?
No, explain.
It's, I think, 28 regular bottles of wine.
Yes,
bottle.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's pretty incredible. You basically need a hand truck to move it, and there's this crazy contraption that you need to pour it, and it's pretty spectacular.
How are you not just at like a small barrel at that point?
Well, because you got to pour it. You can't pour it out of a barrel. You need to put it in the bottle.
Well, you can put a spigot in a barrel.
What about
barrel wine was the original box wine. I just realized that.
That's a really good point.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that box wine is really the purest form of wine.
I think that's what I'm saying.
That's what I'm hearing.
Box wine. Okay. What a callback.
Both did that at the same time.
And speaking of callbacks, let's jump right into our first article. And the callback we'll be making first is to Sam and mine, and maybe Steven's, I forget, our high school days, and when we all, as young jellyfish, kissed dating goodbye. Sam,
we did
about the fallen Joshua Harris.
Fallen Joshua Harris. Yeah, so this topic might be just a little bit over spoken right now, but I found this article when the whole thing was going on, and so I thought it was a very good response and a lot more thoughtful than what many people are saying. This is the article, Wither Evangelical Purity Culture, Thoughts on the Legacy of a Lost Pastor by David French. I like David French. I've put a couple of his articles on here. But this is a good one where he kind of walks through who Joshua Harris is for those who are not familiar with him, and then talks about what the impact of his actions is going to be. So first of all, Josh Harris. He explains who Josh Harris is. He's basically a mega popular evangelical author and pastor. In his, I think it was early 20s, he wrote the book I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which became very popular in evangelical youth circles. Sold almost 1 million copies, and it was incredibly influential in the growth of purity culture. Now, lately, in the last couple of weeks, well, actually, backing up a little bit, about a year ago, Josh Harris came out and talked about how he was investigating whether the book had actually had good results or whether there were some unintended consequences. He ended up releasing a documentary in which he interviewed people who claimed to have been hurt by the contents of that book. The book basically claimed that individuals or high schoolers should not, or Christian high schoolers at least, should not date. It's the title. They should court, which basically is going on dates with the opposite sex, but with parental supervision, parental approval at all times, parental supervision, never kissing, no kind of any physical affection until the wedding day. And that was the whole end goal, was that they would get married, you would go on and have this perfectly happy marriage, because your parents had guided you the whole time and you had never made any bad decisions. So David French has a bit of experience with this culture, with the purity culture. He was actually a youth pastor in 1998 for a brief period of time. He was a youth pastor at an evangelical church where he came into the church in, I think, May, early summer, and the youth of the youth group had declared it No Date 98, meaning inspired by this movement, they were not going to go on a single date. There was not going to be a single date in the entire youth group for the year. And French then goes through the motivations of this, the cultural motivations behind the purity movement. He talks about how the parents of these kids grew up in the 1960s and 70s. Many of them came out of those years hurt by bad relationships, hurt by making poor decisions in those relationships, and they wanted something better for their children. As they told their kids these stories and gave them warnings against being hurt relationally, being hurt even sexually, the kids naturally took that up as an aim, as it almost being a cool thing to stay pure. The problem with this is that there was kind of a dark side to it. David French talks about, or he quotes Caitlin Beatty, another writer, who has called this the sexual prosperity gospel. Basically, one of the undercurrents of the purity movement was that if you wait until marriage to have any kind of sexual relations, when you get into marriage, it'll be better. You won't be tarnished or dirty from all those past partners you've had. Therefore, coming into marriage, it will just be so much better, the best sex in the world, and you're going to have a happier, healthier marriage. And she points out how that's a very questionable message. It's got lots of undercurrents with the prosperity gospel, and it's really not consistent with the gospel. There's no purity that comes from forgiveness in Christ from that, because if you were to sin sexually, that's a stain that you carry with yourself forever. The David French talks about how many people use this logic to say that if they made one mistake, if they slipped up once, then they were stained, they might as well fully indulge. And that was something that we've seen in evangelical cultures coming out of the 1990s, out of this purity movement, is that as young people slip up, they tend to just leave the church entirely, and not try to obtain any kind of moral standing. French ends by calling for an end to legalism. He basically says that we're supposed to embrace the forgiveness found in Christ instead of trying to legalize sexuality in our youth. He ends the article by saying how Harris repented of his legalism, which he did when he made that film. He apologized for this book hurting people. He ended up actually having the book pulled from the press and disavowing the ideas in it, saying that is not what can build a sustainable marriage. The difficult thing is that over the last couple of weeks, Harris has also declared that, first of all, his marriage is ending. Him and his wife are separating, and he has left the church. He no longer believes in, or he no longer call himself a Christian. French's final words of the article are possibly the most poignant, the most harsh indictment of Harris, where he says that, quote, he's like an inadvertent arsonist who flees the burning house rather than helping fight the fire that he helped ignite. I'm sad to see him go, and I'm sadder still to see the pain he caused when he was present.
It's some strong rhetoric that he closes with, for sure.
Some very strong rhetoric. One thing I liked about this article, though, is that overall it was pretty respectful of Harris. He has that strong indictment at the end, but up near the beginning, he actually mentions how Harris's statement of leaving the church contains a lot of integrity. Is that as he realized that he no longer believes in the things of the church, instead of trying to shoehorn them and make them work for him, he just realized that he wanted to respect that tradition and left. I've seen a lot of people, a lot of responses have been criticizing Harris for his divorce and criticizing him for the way he went about that and criticizing him for all the hurt that he's done, but without giving him any way that he could have possibly helped to rebuild those things.
Yeah, that's one thing that I wanted to comment on, is that French does a pretty good job of not necessarily walking the line, but of just doing a good job writing about it, whereas you sort of see, in general, at least two sides to this thing, and also most things that are controversial on the internet, where in this case, you know, it's like the evangeli sharks saying that, like, oh, he never knew Christ really, he was always a faker,
Yes.
he was always just in it for the money, blah blah blah. And then on the other side you have, you know, the woke folks, the ex-evangelicals saying that you know, Josh he's the fullness of evangelical Christianity. We have to burn it all down. His failure proves that sexual mores should be given up on entirely, except for the thoroughly modern ones. And French does a good job of doing neither of the stupid things. So good on him.
Yeah, one of the articles I read on this kind of traced out some of Harris's kind of his moves in life, and I really do kind of feel sorry for him. He was kind of groomed from an early age to become a pastor. It sounds like he became a pastor without ever getting a seminary degree or anything.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like, he rose to wild popularity, wild fame. The eyes of most of the Christian, especially evangelical movement, were on him pretty much his entire life after he wrote this book.
Well, he was incredibly popular back in high school. Him and his brother were actually pretty well known and were partially, they were, as far as I've heard, known as some of the most brilliant people in the homeschooling community.
Oh, wow.
And they kind of helped make homeschooling legitimate to the rest of the world, as they, you know, were accomplishing real world tasks or feats. I don't know exactly the details of it, but they had several academic accomplishments in high school that kind of really helped legitimize the homeschooling movement.
Oh my God. I just realized this.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yes, it is. Did you guys read the book Do Hard Things?
Yeah.
It's the same Harris.
Yes.
It's
Really?
Harris's younger brothers. They were literally groomed, all of them, to be like...
Wait, which younger brothers?
Just Joshua Harris's two younger brothers, or two of them. I don't know how many there are. Alex and Brett Harris. Yeah, wow, geez. Groomed, and they're like Disney child stars, basically.
Yeah. And it sounds like, at this point, the hot take on the article I was reading was that he never really got the chance to question. He never really got the chance to wrestle with a lot of these issues. He was just kind of repeating a lot of the stuff that he was taught. And he clearly, brilliantly, I mean, this thing sold like hotcakes for a reason. But he never had a chance to really wrestle with a lot of these issues. And so I think there was a big scandal in his church.
There was.
And some people started saying, like, yeah, maybe you should actually go to like seminary and, you know, get qualified. And he did. And I think this is my own hot take. I'm guessing at the seminary, he realized that there was a lot in the Christian kind of narrative that he wasn't necessarily on board with, or he never really knew about, or, you know, any number of things. But it sounds like that was the real breaking point.
Because he stepped down shortly after that, I believe.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it's also possible that he wasn't given access to the internet till he was 23, and that's really when the turning point started.
Harsh but fair.
But two brief comments I want to make on this. First, I don't remember if it's the French article that makes this timeline, but unless I miss my guess, I think Harris is actually was towards the tail end of a big purity culture movement, or maybe the second wave of it. Like, because I
Yeah.
remember in high school days, Joshua Harris was a big thing, but like purity balls were less of a thing, and purity rings were a thing, but less of a thing than I've read they were allegedly in the past. So it's just
Yeah,
interesting to see
okay.
him as sort of maybe the final gasp, not necessarily the final gasp, but one of the last big movements in a decades-long struggle of evangelicals to define some kind of sexual ethic and frame
Yeah.
it in modern language.
Yeah,
Thanks.
so let's put this in timeline. I got the timeline a bit wrong. He wrote the book in 2003 when he was, and it was released in 2003,
He was
and he was
21, right?
21. Yep, he was
Dang.
21 at the time.
The one other thing, just to add a final tail end here, unless someone else has something. There was also a couple weeks back. I'm fairly certain I commented on it on the podcast. But a New York Times opinion piece talking about a person who I believe grew up in purity culture and then broke out, went the opposite direction, and found both of them wanting in the end. Found them both without sufficient meaning generation qualities, maybe. Both sort of legalistic, both very shallow, both very without metaphysics, leaving their experiences as much as one would experience in a metaphysical wasteland, you could say.
Now that's a callback.
That is a callback. But all that to say, French doesn't necessarily provide a way forward. That's not his job in this article, obviously. I don't know where I was going with that. But anyway, it's yeah, you know what? I'm just going to give up while I'm somewhat ahead.
I guess something tertiary to this. Kind of there was another big splash made a couple of days ago with I think one of the Hillsong
Yep.
a leader or a
I
band
missed
leaders.
this.
Apparently he has apostatized as well.
And David Fredge has showed up with an article about that too.
Oh,
I
really?
skimmed it.
Who is it?
I don't know. I don't follow
Marty something.
Samson. I want to say his last name was Samson.
Pretty sure his
Marty
first name was
Sampson.
Marty.
Oh,
Because I was
Marty
like,
Samson then.
like, who would name their child Marty? Like, that's just mean. So I remembered it.
Yeah, maybe they were huge fans of Back to the Future. But yeah, apparently he fell away. Although I feel somewhat bad because I really don't like kind of glorifying in anyone's fall or anything. I think there's something quite sad about it. But I recall looking at his objections. Apparently he posted it's on an Instagram post or something like that, and it was just this very, very cookie cutter, just like problems that like any intro to theology text would just immediately address and do away with.
Yeah.
And it just very, very shallow issues that he apparently thought was like a big deal and that no one was talking about. And I just remember thinking like, dude, like literally any branch of Christianity, you want to go Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, all of them have spent so much time discussing these really like certainly tricky issues, but like this should not cause as much consternation as you claim right now. Like if you had read a little bit more, maybe you'd be better off.
So what I'm hearing is his parents homeschooled him for like 36, 42 years and finally gave him access to the internet just a couple weeks ago. He found an atheist YouTube channel and it just shattered his faith, is what I'm pretty sure the line of events there was. But speaking of faith, Stephen, I believe you have an article about the faith that many atheists must confirm if they are to be true atheists.
I do indeed. Nice transition. So today's article features David Bentley Hart again, who I think I've brought up once or twice before. I have something for philosophers that have three names apparently and are named David. So this individual is quickly climbing the ranks of my favorite theologians, and he has an article called "God, Gods, and Fairies," which discusses the frequently made claim by popular atheists concerning the nature of atheism, namely that belief in God is akin to belief in fairies or other mythical beings. A slightly more highbrow, but no less annoying claim is that there is no difference between not believing in God and not believing in Zeus, often coined in the catchy phrase, "Everyone's an atheist, we just go one God further." Ha 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 ha. Hart identifies this mistake as a problem of ontology, namely the fact that the one making this claim does not understand what is meant by the term God. Quote, "Admittedly, I suppose, it is possible to mistake the word God for the name of some discrete object that might or might not be found within the fold of nature. if one just happens to be more or less ignorant of the entire history of theistic belief. But really, the distinction between God, meaning the one God who is the transcendent source of all things, and any particular God, meaning one or another of the plurality of divine beings who inhabit the cosmos, is one that, in the Western tradition, goes back at least as far as Xenophanes. God is the end quote. God is the uncreated and transcendent versus God as lowercase g God or gods as creatures themselves is another way to look at it. Hart is firm that this distinction is, quote, merely in numbering between monotheism and polytheism, as though the issue were simply how many divine entities one thinks there are. Rather, it is a distinction between two qualitatively incommensurable kinds of reality, belonging to two wholly disparate conceptual orders, end quote. He transitions to make the unique and quite brilliant move that belief in the gods is a matter of scientific belief. Quote, fairies and gods, if they exist, occupy something of the same conceptual space as organic cells, photons, and the force of gravity. And so the sciences might perhaps have something to say about them if a proper medium is for investigating them could be found. Belief or disbelief in fairies or gods could never be validated by philosophical arguments made from first principles. The existence or non-existence of Zeus is not a matter that can be intelligibly discussed in the categories of modal logic or metaphysics, any more than the existence of tree frogs could be. If he is there at all, one must go on an expedition to find him. End quote. Whereas God alone can be investigated by the field of theology or philosophy or more mystical experiences. He ultimately dismisses an atheism that does not account for this. Not to say that he doesn't believe atheism can exist or what have you. I know elsewhere he holds Nietzsche up in high regards precisely because he knew exactly what he was rejecting. But from what I understand, this article is likely a precursor to his book, The Experience of God, Being, Consciousness, and Bliss, which is described as the one theology book atheists should read by journalist and atheist Oliver Berkman, that at least if you do not believe, you will know precisely what you do not believe in. So I really like this article. I think he does a very good job kind of differentiating between kind of the upper case G God and the lowercase g God. Although I think I heard Thomas Aquinas rolling around in his grave when Hart said that you can't make an argument from first principles on the angels, but that's probably besides the point.
No, I like that, and that's definitely an argument that I think that we've all heard before.
Yeah,
is that God's just a mythical creature because it's a lot easier to attack that version of God, and so if you turn him into that, it's very, very easy to make an argument against it.
Yeah. Well, it's an easy trap to fall into from a theistic perspective in that a lot of times, a lot of the rote teleological or cosmological arguments were given, especially kind of at a more young age, is what God explains the existence of the universe.
Yes.
Or God is, like look at nature around you. How can God not exist? Which Hart actually pretty candidly rejects and says, like, no, that's called a demiurge. That's called an architect. That is not God. Now, he doesn't reject God as creator, but he says that God is in essence like the being of all beings. He is that from which all being comes. Without him, there is no being. So he is not a being. He is kind of being itself.
Interesting. So what would he say to natural revelation?
I'm guessing he would say that's arguing from first principles, and he would possibly nod in approval towards it, possibly not.
Okay.
That one I would need to read more David Bentley Hart to know for sure what he would think about that.
As I interject here, I would propose that much in the manner that we refer to David Foster Wallace as DFW, David Bentley Hart is now DBH, so we can add him to the taxonomy that we have here.
Perfect.
I also very much enjoyed this article. You actually read the passage that I wanted to quote, talking about putting Zeus in the sort of taxonomy of fairies and in the natural world, sort of one level above humans, that, if he exists, we have to go on an expedition to go find him. But you'll never have a expedition that can explore adequately in the natural world, the ontological basis for all being that is purely the realm of theology, logic, metaphysics, etc. But also the conception of gods and fairies and there being a sharp divide between that and God makes the world much more open and much more potentially magical, which is a fun concept and appeals to my English major side. You guys sort of already touched on the main thought that I had about this article, which is that his DBH's diagnosis regarding atheists and sort of the smug You believe in your sky god, whatever.
I believe the preferred term is Sky Wizard.
Sky wizard,
Sky
yes.
Wizard.
Your bearded sky wizard. Your sky wizard with sexual hang-ups, to tie it back to the previous thing. But as you've already touched on, it's not exactly as if the typical Christian, quote unquote, let's say grassroots discourse is elevated to warrant the kind of highbrow snobbery that DBH lays out here. There's just been so much lost in terms of lost or maybe never found. Let's not be nostalgic for a golden age of perfect catechesis, but theological discourse is just so decayed and never encountered even in, institutions of higher learning. Like in the theology classes, we never even touched on things like, say, the 5 proofs for God, and then working from there, the classical arguments for the specific divine revelation of the God of the Old Testament and New. We just all started on this weird assumption of evangelical, I don't want to say sky god, but sky god, and then debated how much of a social justice warrior he was. Like that was the content of the theology classes at the university that I went to.
And I think that part of it is that the evangelical culture, well, again, not to be so critical because I've done nothing but criticize them today, but it really lives into that where you focus a lot more on personal experience and experiencing this being, and that becomes far less provable. You can't use theology, and actually some of them outright reject using the proofs for God in theology to find God, saying no, you need to actually just defer to something deeper, your personal experience.
The irony.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, continue. I interrupted you.
No, that was I have rants about the comment section of various blogs, but that's neither here nor there. But I mean, just
I
even
hear that.
Well, yeah, okay, sure. So just talking about the Christian discourse is just not terribly well constructed. I had an article published recently talking about fertility rates in various countries and sort of where the world is heading in terms of population, whether we're heading towards overpopulation or underpopulation. I thought it was a pretty careful review, fairly nonpartisan, fairly even-handed, but somehow like there's 220 comments and they're all talking about like French libido and like people complaining that their anti-Muslim comments got deleted. So
now,
yeah.
Now, I would like to let the listeners know that you just so subtly dropped that. You just had an article published.
Yes.
Where was it published, Revan?
First Things, yes.
Published in First Things.
Yes, in the small journal First Things.
Yeah.
He's now published author.
However, online, so it takes away some of the steam, but
but
there's
not
still
all of it.
Not all of it, no.
Heaven
It's still
forbid
a
all of the
worthwhile
steam.
Humble brag.
So just as a final note, like I remember first encountering through a professor who, told me, hey, go look at, Anselm's proofs for the existence of God and look at Aquinas's proofs for the existence of God. And just, making this argument that was totally unknown to me that like there are these people called Thomists and they've been around for a very long time. And one of the core things of their thought and argumentation is that actually you can prove God's existence or God, God as ultimate reality, from which, the uncaused cause, whatever. And then you can work down to the specifics later. But that you can prove that from logic. And I was like, what? That's a thing that exists? What is this madness? And it's just so lost from the vocabulary that could even be a possibility, that it allows people to fall into this, snide nihilism, snide atheism, without considering the full ramifications that DBH brings out very well in this article.
Anselm's ontological argument was what got me into philosophy. I love Anselm. He is such a good theologian.
But don't you think that the ontological argument is merely word salad?
Yeah, all it is word salad. Shout out to our friend who runs the what's the page called? Ontologically something memes for I don't know.
Well, there's a ontologically dehydrated memes for saladated teens or something. I don't know. There's lots of great philosophy meme pages. If you don't follow all of them, go follow all of them.
I mean, I just followed the meme pages. Well, I mean, I just followed the brick philosophy page.
Oh yeah, I just started
but
following
Legos.
that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of pages to follow, like, favorite, and subscribe our our new Facebook page or whatever.
Our new completely blank Facebook page that
Yes, it's very blank.
We
But it
have a
will have this
Facebook
episode.
page.
Sam, you need to read all of the things we put in the group chat.
I'm not.
This is-
I'm working.
So are we. Okay. So, but speaking of working, some people would very much not like to work at all. In fact, they see work as drudgery and toil, not ennobling, but in fact, wage slavery as the product, not of just how the world works and the production of value for other human beings, but as a grave evil. And those people are socialists. And my article is When Did Everyone Become a Socialist? In New York Magazine. It's rather long, but quite interesting look at sort of the social sphere of the rip-roaring, unionizing, very active, fancy-dressing Democratic Socialist of America socialites in New York City. It documents sort of the rise of these new socialists, very, at least in large part, highly educated, young New York folks is what the article focuses on, though it's only fair to note that the Democratic Socialists of America, the political party / beer club, kind of unclear, grew from 6,000 to 56,000 in like 2 years since Trump was elected. So I don't have a whole lot to say here, except that it should be vaguely required reading for people who just want to understand sort of one of the political, economic, social undercurrents of our current debate, especially if you're anywhere near Twitter, because these people are on Twitter. Most of them probably are the extremely online type. And the article catalogs a couple different strains of socialism. There's always sort of the classic old-timey union folks who, they're electricians, their grandfathers were electricians, and their great-grandfathers, ran the mafia, and they care very deeply about unions and union this, union that. And then there's sort of the Jacobin types, which are the intellectual magazine, all about, putting the rich to the guillotine. They're much more about talking about how class warfare rises above identity politics. They're just trying to get class consciousness to work in the United States. Hopefully they'll continue to fail nicely. And then there's the intersectionality theorists who, combine class and race and gender, sexuality, etc., much more focused on that angle. And then there's the most interesting strain, mostly because I vaguely keep track of them somewhat, which is dirtbag left, probably kind of a subset of the Jacobins in that they're not much about identity politics, very crass, very rude, very nihilistic. Chapo Trap House is sort of the podcast for this crew. It's quite amusing. They do good Call of Cthulhu campaigns, actually. Very, very funny.
Really now?
Yes, and they have good commentary on cults.
Yes. By good Call of Cthulhu, I mean they like really lean into the like 1920s racism against Irish and Italians, which is funny in modern context. Probably was less funny then.
Probably.
But when they're talking about the Italians, taking over stuff and summoning Catholic demon gods or whatever, it's pretty funny. So all of these different strains obviously having a much larger impact on the culture than they have in the past, especially with the Democratic primary. These are very active people, very involved people. There's just one final quote that I'll end with here, talking about how this group sort of came to rise to greater national prominence, and that is a quote: "The most straightforward explanation for the socialist boom is, fittingly, a material one. Saddled with student debt and thrust into a shit post-2008 economy, millennials were overeducated, downwardly mobile, and financially insecure. On top of everything, the internet was making them feel bad, and the planet was melting. The precariat, they called themselves." End quote. And we've talked a little bit about this group and sort of the material causes behind different dissatisfactions and social pathologies. I'm vaguely partial to this argument from a weird, more right-wing angle. But yeah, it's a good article. It's a good sort of deep dive. You meet some interesting characters. Highly recommend the article, just on the writing standpoint. And yeah, good stuff. I left you guys no inroads to comment.
No,
Sam,
I do have a comment.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Well, my only comment is I want to apologize to all of the subset of our listeners
Listener.
Our listener out of the 3 who listened to us because he or she, not discriminating here, is a diehard MacIntyre fan for the Marxist stuff, and then just realized some disturbing news that we are not in fact Marxists.
Ooh, we're sorry about that.
Yeah.
Oh, man. I feel like we just led that person on.
However, as our dear friend and former co-host on this podcast would say, socialism is too good an idea to be left to the left. So ne'er give up hope. Maybe one day we'll circle back around to socialism of a more feudal type, which is the only proper kind, as we all know.
We may yet, Mr. Frodo. We may yet.
That was good.
So just to that one listener, just hang on. We'll get there.
Stephen, I can always count on you to say that was a thing and make go.
You broke up on me again, but for the impression I'm getting is you're counting on me to say something intelligent, which I'll take my best stab at it. One of the interesting things I've been percolating. This will somewhat be related to my rant, I think. The reaction. It kind of you can hardly read an article anymore without Trump coming into it, especially if it comes or if it's discussing politics at all, and this one is certainly no exception. And apparently, a lot of kind of the pushback from both Trump's admittedly disgusting platform and also from the clear failure of the Democratic Party to beat this obviously disgusting platform. It kind of resulted in socialism. Now, this article did add nuance and say that Bernie Sanders is getting onto the stage even before the whole Trump hullabaloo thing. That is an indicator that there is a rising interest. But I still find it so interesting that I suppose I find it ironic that somebody who is so hated still dictates the decisions that the people who hate him make, and I find that fairly disturbing, honestly, that these people that are clearly kind of jumping onto this more radical ideology are doing so partially in their own words. They credit Trump to this disgusting human being who they don't, or this person who they find so disgusting. They give him credit for getting there. It's just kind of this weird paradoxical sort of situation that I read in that. Sorry, that's another one where there's no inroads. That's just it's just a strange observation that so much of our political sphere and people's very worldviews are getting dictated by this person. Love him or hate him, they're allowing him to dictate their worldviews.
I mean, on the positive side, just think we are living through 8 billion academic articles that are going to be written using Trump as a case study in 50 years.
That is true. Although with that, I just respond, the whole "may you have an interesting life" is viewed as a curse. I kind of agree with that.
I just want to live in the golden age of the Cold War. That was a good time.
Yeah, back in the days
where the party sort of worked.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
The party sort of worked because if we didn't, we'd get nuked. Maybe that's the real guys. The real answer has been with us the entire time. The Saint Seraphim option. And that's a callback.
Speaking of callbacks, they do get really annoying sometimes, and when things annoy you, you want to rant. Steven, do you have a rant?
Oh, buddy, oh boy, do I have a rant. Actually, this is a relatively minor thing. Arguing with people on the internet. I frequent Reddit every so often, mainly R Christianity. Actually, recently I had to stop because I was getting so irritated. Different articles will come on R Christianity, and several of them, or 2 of them in particular, caught my eye. Now, I am by no means a hyper-conservative. I don't even consider myself conservative most of the time. I consider myself moderate. But I almost, with people who kind of veer both far left and far right, I just enjoy kind of poking at them and seeing how far they'll go. And in 2 of them, one of them was on the ICE camps in the border, and another was on gun control. And in both of them, there was this fear. I think that is the best way to describe it. I think in one case it was actual fear that this person, this was on the gun control debate, and this person was saying that they lived in fear of a mass shooting. And I tried to say, well, you actually, studies have shown they've done, the numbers, they've crunched the numbers, and you have a greater chance of getting hit by lightning than being victim in a mass shooting. So, that's, I understand that you're going through this, but just realistically speaking, you don't actually have to be afraid over this. And in the ice thing, it was concerning. They were using the analogy of concentration camps, and I said, like, look, that's very fear-based rhetoric. They're not concentration camps. They are horrible camps, and they need to be improved greatly, obviously, but they're not concentration camps. And in both cases, the sheer amount of fear rhetoric that is used is honestly kind of disturbing. Like, people are actually legitimately afraid. And that's allowing them to dictate, or that is allowing people to be dictated by their fear rather than by more rational discussion. Now, someone may critique me and say, well, there are some cases in which case people really should be afraid, and that fear will dictate their actions because, if you are afraid of getting hit by a bus, you will drive more carefully. If you are afraid of getting hit by lightning, you won't walk around a thunderstorm holding up a metal rod or whatever. And to which I say, fair enough, but I see a lot of these instances of fear-based rhetoric kind of cropping into a lot of our political discussions, and it's somewhat concerning. I'm somewhat afraid of that fact, paradoxically. Yep, that's about all I got. Is quit using fear-based rhetoric and think. Yeah, that's about it. Yep.
Well, speaking of thinking, I read a great history book called King Leopold's Ghost recently, and it's all about King Leopold, I think the first, maybe the second at most, of Belgium, and his fun murder garden in the Congo. So massive depopulation, which you can read as forced labor, lots of warfare, just straight up murder, incredible resource theft, and just cruelty on a nearly unimaginable scale. The estimate runs like 10 million dead on account of his policies. So basically a Holocaust. Actually more than one and a half. And obviously this isn't unique to the Congo in Africa or other colonized areas, nor to Belgium being a perpetrator. Belgium felt the brunt of a lot of aggression in World War I from the Germans, for example, which actually historically has given them some cover for their actions in the Congo. Not surprisingly, but maybe ironically. I don't necessarily have a conclusion for this rant, but the book was a reminder of the deep and dark evil potential of humanity and how much we actively forget at any given time of what we've done as a species. But we can use this as a reminder of both sort of the depth and the specificity of evil that is possible, as well as the reminder, as Viktor Frankl said, that good and evil run in every human heart, and we should always watch for it. That's it. Sam, rant.
Kind of coming off of Stephen's rant a little bit, is we can't make every single conflict in the world in the political sphere at least, a life or death situation. It's not the greatest human rights event of our time. But my question is, what if it is? Have I ranted before about the Uyghurs in China? I feel like I have, because it's an issue that I really care about.
I'm not sure if you have.
Okay, well, I should, because this is an issue that it's popped up in a few journals. It's taken a little bit of notice on the press, but nothing's happening. Currently, China, there's credible evidence to show that China is currently imprisoning about 1.2 million people in northeastern China. These people are of the ethnic group the Uyghurs, which are Chinese Muslims. They are imprisoning them in re-education camps where people go in and come out renouncing their faith.
Oh, geez. It's
shocking. Islam has been basically entirely banned in the entire region, which I'm not going to even try to pronounce. Xinjiang was the region. And sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Yeah.
Ready to go?
No, because I'm in the middle of recording.
No, you're not. You're coming with us.
I'm actually in the middle of a sentence.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hello, viewers. It is me, Sam.
Sorry. Basically, this is happening in the region of Xinjiang, which is in northeastern China. And I would argue to say, not to be dramatic, but it is possibly the greatest human rights crisis of our time, where they're bulldozing down 1,000-year-old mosques, forcing people into what are de facto concentration camps. The evidence for that is sketchy, and so I'm going to be upfront about that and say that it's not conclusively proven. But when everybody comes, all these people have been genetically cataloged. Basically, you get interviewed. They take all notes about your size, your blood type, your DNA, everything. And then, strangely enough, in Beijing and other urban areas in China, obtaining organ donations has been incredibly easy over the last 5 years. Like, far more than one would expect for the number of registered donors. It's disturbing, and the United States is saying absolutely nothing.
Well, that's terrifying.
So that's my rant, is that it's something that I've been following for a while. It's very, I don't even know, terrifying and concerning, and more concerning is the fact that the United States is doing absolutely nothing, as that Trump has an opportunity to use this as a reason for his tariffs. And honestly, I think many people would support him in his tariffs if he just came out and said we're tariffing them because these human rights abuses. But he's never going to do that. And in reality, the United States government isn't going to do anything about it. And that's rant worthy, I think.
Yep, lump
Indeed.
that on top of the Hong Kong protests and the Chinese military massing at the border between China and Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Yep. Good times.
Stuff's about to go down in China.
Well, hopefully not.
Well, if not, why didn't it?
Yeah, it's fair.
Nothing went down after Tiananmen Square. But anyway.
Wow, so I just want to say, Season 2, everyone. Welcome to Season 2 and Sam's uplifting rants. We can't let him go last, is the thing.
Yeah, for real.
But see, guys,
He's way more
He's
encouraging
always
than
like,
this.
massive human rights. Everyone's going to die. The Uyghurs, Hong Kong, everyone's going to be wiped out. Tiananmen Square. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, but see, half the time I have happy rants, and you guys are like, why are you so happy right now?
Yep, nope,
And-
I'm actually with you on this one, Sam. It is almost refreshing in a weird sort of way to hear an angry rant from you.
Okay, I'm glad.
Just maybe we won't put you at the end next time, because now we're all set.
Okay, well, I'll let you guys know whether it's going to be happy or angry beforehand, and you can beginning or end.
Excellent.
Yep, that's a plan.
Great.
Cool. Well, speaking of plans, I think some other people have plans to get to and go to, so we will be ending this first episode here. It has been a pleasure.
Nay, an honor.
Nay, an honor. Nay, an honor. So for everyone here at the Problem with Reading podcast, I'm Brevin.
I'm Steven.
And I'm Sam.
And we will see you next time.
Adios.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Season 2. Well, we'll find our opening bit somewhere in there. I'm sure we'll say just like one or two snappy lines. Maybe they can't, fit in, so we have to just throw it to the beginning and cut out all context.
That's what we always bank on.
That's what we always bank on. But anyway,